But go ahead, just use the Wi-Fi. I'll put you on the extender so you're on it sort of local.
Okay, okay.
Well, it's butter.
Ah, that chair really squeaks.
Sorry, I'll try not to.
No, I wonder if I should.
We started. We're
Well,
gonna
I
wait
don't
for
know.
it, because it's a tiny little, it's kind of old, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I don't know. I mean, Ignacio really fortified it and really glued it and got it back together. But I guess I could put a rug on it.
What's the?
But that was
it's the joint
stop it.
that-
I don't think that was
I'm
stop it.
supposed to do that.
What?
Carry through
Got
that
it.
too.
Got
That creek,
Who started?
don't you know it's
Oh.
It's the creek's over here, yes.
We're very honored tonight. We have an advanced yogi from Seattle with us.
My friend to him, where is he?
Where indeed.
Where indeed.
Wouldn't be Satsang
Everybody
without
knows
Chai.
that's something music.
It is satsang music.
That's the sound of sod
Right.
That's right.
You online?
Mhm.
On a scale of 0 to 10, where would you put awareness?
What?
Awareness doesn't have a location and it doesn't have value. So I wouldn't know how to answer that question.
On a scale of 0 to 10, where would you put awareness as a part of a person's journey?
Awareness is not a part of anything. Awareness is what you are. Awareness is being itself.
On a path of 0 to 10, where would you put awareness in terms of importance of discovery for a person interested in discovering truth?
10.
Let's have some self.
So, you say it's a matter of learning or knowing how to pay attention to something that's already there.
No, it's a matter of noticing.
Okay, noticing something that's already there
Yeah, recognizing.
that is not always recognized. So that the path then becomes one of recognition of awareness or not caring whether you recognize awareness or not.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow that. It doesn't sound like an either or to me.
Well, the path is the deepening of the recognition of awareness.
Well, I wouldn't sum it up that way.
Well, it's not the whole walking, but
Awareness is not a discrete entity. Awareness is not a discrete thing. Awareness is an aspect of reality. Radiance is also an aspect of reality. All of this differentiation that seems to appear as experience is equally as much a part of reality as awareness is. And what needs to be recognized is the actual nature of what is here, as it is, which exists in the way that it does, very clearly and obviously, but it does not, the way it is and what it is does not at all conform to normal human philosophies about what it is. And so that's why that's the difficulty in recognizing it, is because it doesn't conform to our expectations of what we may think we're looking for. So I wouldn't separate awareness out as a special quality, or certainly as a separate thing. Awareness is an aspect of reality, but reality needs to be recognized, and reality includes all of its aspects as one thing, and its aspects are not actually separate from each other. We can discuss them as if they were separate from each other. You can talk about how water flows and water is wet and water is reflective, but you don't find those are all just referring to water, which is one thing. There's no reflectivity and then flowingness that are two separate things. And so likewise, radiance, or let's say dynamic presentation as differentiation, and awareness, spontaneous awareness, which is presence, are one and the same, even though they can sort of be talked about or analyzed from two different angles in terms of emphasizing those different aspects. And so what that is needs to be recognized, and that alone exists needs to be recognized, and at that point everything else falls into place.
But you have to be aware of it. I mean, it's always there.
Yeah, of course, recognize it.
It's what it is, but
Yeah.
for some reason, it's not noticeable.
It's very noticeable. It's completely noticeable.
Not recognized.
It's not recognized mostly due to distraction. People tend to be distracted by things that they think exist, that they think they're interested in. And so they don't notice that these things are just aspects of something else, which is entirely other than that. Looks very much like a dream. And it's hard to notice a dream because what a dream actually is, because you're so caught up in the events of the dream that you don't notice the medium of those events, which is the dream, and the fundamental fact that the dreaming alone exists, and the events of the dream don't actually exist. They only exist as apparent artifacts of the fact of dreaming.
Can you experience or recognize this without awareness?
Of course not. Nothing can be recognized without awareness. Awareness is a fundamental fact of experiencing.
Awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I thought maybe that's. Is it awareness the same as recognizing? Are they?
Yes, awareness and recognizing are one and the same in one sense, in another sense not. Awareness is the fundamental condition of existence, and recognizing is a matter of perspective.
Okay.
This napkin exists, but if I'm fixated on the napkin as being the napkin, and here's this napkin, and the napkin exists, and it's really the whole, this is the napkin, then that's a perspective. And then another perspective is, the field of experience exists, and this napkin is merely a small aspect of the field of experience which exists.
Right.
And it has no independent existence whatsoever. It exists because the field of experience is presenting itself to itself in terms of this to the extent that it does. And so the napkin is the same in either case, but the perspective on how that is being perceived in is different. Or a dream, think of a lucid dream versus being lost in a dream. Recognizing a dream as a lucid dream is a matter of perspective. It's not seeing anything that you're not already seeing when you're in the dream, but you're getting the perspective of, oh, wait a minute, I'm not really in this. This is in me. This is appearing as a field of experience, and these are just apparitions. And oh, I'm dreaming. What a hoot. And so the experience is actually exactly the same, but the perspective in which it's being perceived is different. So that's what recognition consists of.
Yeah, because I think, well, I don't know, I'm starting to question, your definitive answer to that. This is always here,
Yes.
whether I'm aware of it, consciously aware of it or not.
Right.
Well, is there some kind of subconscious or subliminal type of awareness? Maybe I'm just not. I don't know. It just seems that there, awareness does seem to be some kind of a little bit different quality than just absolute recognition or absolute experience.
I don't follow you. Awareness and recognition have nothing to do with each other. Awareness is a fundamental condition that has to exist for recognition to occur or not. If there's no awareness, there's no experience. Awareness is perceiving.
Okay, right. Well, then
So, it depends on how you want to define these words, and obviously people use these words to refer to all different kinds of apparent things they think that they refer to.
I think there's a very simple experiment you can do. Are you aware? Say, you are, right? You're aware?
Yeah.
How do you know that?
Because I'm aware of it.
How do you know it? Don't answer the question, just how are you aware? How do you know?
What is that?
So that's the thing, that's the experience, right? It's experience.
Sure.
But you couldn't even call it an experience because that's too much too.
But getting back to Pam's question, there is always an awareness of this
Of course,
in every single moment.
absolutely. Experience is that.
Experience is that, whether you're aware of it or not.
Yeah, and recognition is seeing what experience is in the perspective of experience itself, rather than seeing it from some cobbled up perspective of interpretive framework of that and the other. So experiencing experience from the perspective of experience itself is the realized perspective, is what recognition consists of.
Say that again?
Experiencing experience from the perspective of experience is what realization consists of. That's the realized perspective.
No other to experience it.
Yeah, experience is what it is, and when you're experiencing from the perspective of what it is, from its own perspective, then that's what recognition is. So you're not looking at it from some other
Imagine.
of course, imagined or constructed, perspective that is basically being imposed as an interpretive framework on the already ongoing fact and already actually completely fully realized fact of experience as it is.
I noticed that when I just in the simple act of just looking at something directly, when I see it, there's no awareness there.
No.
There's no experience there. There's just the seeing.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah, those are all synonyms, but there's the one thing. This is that. This is the one
But
thing.
to have awareness, I have to imagine this awareness that does that.
Well, that's an awareness that you're defining as some awareness that you have to construct as some awareness,
Right.
rather than the intrinsic awareness, which is experiencing itself.
Right. Which doesn't need anything else.
Well, of course it doesn't. It doesn't.
Or isn't anything.
Right. It can't have anything else.
I like knowledge by it, knowing by it,
Yeah.
by being there.
Yeah. You know it by being it. Experience knows itself by being itself, and that is the true perspective. That's the actual, the objective perspective, call it. And any other perspective, it's the only perspective, actually, any other perspective has to be imagined, has to be created. Like I can imagine, oh, I'm in this body and I don't exist anywhere else but in this body. I can imagine that this is an outside, objectively existing world, and I exist within this world, and I am a small thing in a big world. I can imagine all of this, right? And of course, we're all very familiar with this perspective. But all of that is a matter of the presence of the in anything appears in the field of experience. The body appears in the field of experience. How could it be in the body? How could it be in the objective world? Because here's the objective world. Where is it? It's in the field of my experience, and the field of my experience is vast, and the objective world is tiny. You know, it's self-evident. But it's easy to not recognize that if you've been essentially brainwashed into these interpretive frameworks. It's like when you go to see a movie, you know. You go to see a movie and all there is patterns of light on the sound. But it's very easy to slip into the interpretation of, oh, wait a minute, these patterns of light are actually depicting another world, another space, another events. And there's actually, and some of these patterns are actually other beings and objects. And so you construct this whole fantasy of all of this stuff happening. And none of it is actually there. It's just not there. All that there's there is patterns of light on the screen. And likewise here, here's the objective world. Well, I close my eyes, where'd the objective world go? You know, it's just patterns of light in my field of vision.
Well, is it true that there's, like I've heard it said that there's a mental aspect to that recognition, there's a sort of feeling aspect, there's a bodily aspect, and one can experience the recognition at like one of those levels and not all of them?
Possibly, but those aren't actually discrete, and they aren't actual things where there's, you know, like some checklist of, oh, there's that one now, where's the next one? They're not like separate things like the floors in the building, or, you know, they're just arbitrary ways of classifying something. It's possible to have a recognition that is predominantly conceptual, and it's possible to have a recognition that you could be called predominantly visceral, say, and various other things. But those aren't actually, you know, discrete things.
It's actually irrelevant because when it's known, there's no doubt.
Yeah, but when it's known fully.
Fully.
But in the process of coming to know this, in the process of coming to explore this, there can be all different kinds of sort of partial contacts with it, so to speak, that can seem to fall in this kind of categories you're suggesting. But those categories aren't actual, or aren't, you know, fixed. They aren't actual categories that exist. They're just sort of arbitrary ways of putting it.
They are ways that we use to describe an experience, and as such, as descriptive terms, they're all absolutely accurate, but they're none of them discrete.
Yeah, they don't actually exist. I mean, they're useful descriptions, but they aren't actually objectively existent. I mean, the point is not to classify this or to classify ways of recognizing this. The point is to have the damn recognition. And the whole trick with that, the way to have the recognition is be with your experience as nakedly as possible, and explore the way that it is, explore what's happening. What is experience? I mean, that's the koan. What is experience? Here it is, right? Here's experience. Your experience is right here, right? What is it? Just in itself, not from the point of view of philosophy, from the Lama said. Just what hearing it, just It's right here. You got it yourself. You can poke it. You can. Here's the laboratory. Here's the test tube. What is it that is here? Check it out, and you actually have the capability to discover what it is because you are it. So no matter how weird and subtle it is, you are as weird. You are equally weird and subtle. So you can meet it in the ways that it is itself, whether you know it or not, without needing recourse to process, without needing recourse to training. You just be with this. Here it is. What is it? And feel what it is. And the fact is that is feelable. That is knowable. And have at it. And then various things can seem to happen in various partial revelations and partial discoveries and partial insights and this, that, and the other. All fine, but don't bother classifying them. The point isn't to collect experiences and classify them. The point is just to get to the bottom of the thing, get to the bottom line.
And even the revelations and the things into it, I would say it's best not to hover over them too much.
Yeah, because they're just this.
They go anyway.
Revelations are just experience.
Yeah.
Revelations are not things in themselves. Revelations are just experience. So there's just more fuel for noticing.
Well, because they can, but worse, the revelations, if you pause over them too long, it becomes another rant and your conceptual.
Another brick in the wall, as they say.
What?
Another brick in the wall.
Oh.
Good one.
I'm a plagiarist, but yeah.
Cinder blocks, all right. Bricks are too small.
But how much of a distraction now? There's still only one thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they're all part of this.
Yeah, it's good. Everything is it. And so whatever comes up, what is that? I mean, not from the point of view of classifying it, but just like, whoa, that's amazing. What is it? You know, so undercut what it seems to be and go to what it is. And if that presents as something else, it's like, okay, cool, but undercut what that seems to be and go to what it is. And you just keep going to what it is. And because that's where you are. You're actually already with what it is. Here's experience. You're already completely with it. It's not like, how do you get to experience? It's like, you can't possibly distance yourself from experience. There's zero distance between you and experience. You are experience. You know, so here it is. So what the fuck is it that is here? Sorry.
It's a family show.
Sorry, children. This is it's past your bedtime.
When you say, just look and see what it is, and you repeat that a lot, it's very easy to then take it and think, oh, I have to work at this. And I know that is a problem from my own experiences and I'm seeing it in other people, and then it becomes this thing where then you just go off on another tangent.
Sure. Yeah.
So the way I see it or saw it was when everything went into relaxation, and that inherent impulse in whatever this is that I am was headed in that direction anyway from childhood. So it's not something I conjured up and decided to be that way. So I trusted that would find its own way because its impulse is to do this. So I don't have to get there with a whip.
It's not something you need to do. That's why I like this word noticing. You're noticing what you're already doing. You're already experiencing. This is already experienced. So it's already 100% on. Just notice what that is. It's not like you need to add something to that or do something or, be with that in some special way. You already are with it in the special way, in the only special way. And so just like recognize that fact. Recognize, well, here experience is happening. It's already full on. It's already 100% itself, and cool. So recognize it. Notice that is in fact the case, and that there's nothing else. There's nothing other than experience. I mean, that's completely obvious. Try and find something other than experience. Where you're going to look? You have to look in experience.
Well, it's interesting because in a dream, there is experience.
Absolutely,
And you think that that's all it is.
absolutely.
But then suddenly a whole different dimension comes into being.
Right.
So, so what would you say is comparable outside the dream world as this world? There's nothing that is that dramatically different in
This can present itself as infinitely different from itself, but it never actually changes one iota from what it is. So this can present as anything. This can present as infinitely differentiated within itself, but it never departs from itself. So it can look like dreams. It can look like a waking world. It can look like being dead. It can look like being deep sleep. It can look like being in general anesthesia. It can look like being mugged in a street fight. It can look like anything, right? But it never becomes anything other than exactly what it is right here, right now. And it's always exactly what it is now. It always is exactly that, whatever it looks like. Because what it is not dependent upon what it looks like.
so seeing reality as it is without interpretation and what it is would be comparable to becoming lucid in a dream.
Sure.
Would you say that, or is it
Sure.
something more than?
No, I'd say very much so. But it's becoming lucid in experience, which includes dreams and non-dreams and waking state, and it's just becoming lucid. I mean, we qualify lucid dreaming as a special quality, but the lucidity, in fact, is recognition, and that lucidity can that lucidity can happen across the board.
This is already lucid. This
Yeah.
is lucid.
Yeah.
So you don't have to do.
No, it's all very paradoxical. This is already lucid and it already realizes itself, but it can seem to be with itself as if it is not realizing itself, and then it can then come to recognize itself.
But it isn't. So.
No, it's not actually like that, but it can seem like that.
Well, so what if it seems like that?
Oh no, it doesn't matter at all. But this is only relevant for people for whom it seems to be relevant.
No, I understand. But, that's what I'm saying.
It's all not recognizing it and recognizing it.
Understand. What the fuck does it matter?
Well, you do understand
Well,
because you can say that and say it profoundly. You can say that with deep meaningfulness because that reflects the depth of your understanding.
But my experience is absolutely no different than when I, quote, didn't understand.
Of course it is. It's not going to be, nothing changes.
Nothing.
Recognition is not change. Recognition is recognizing what it always has been.
The experience of being.
So it's very paradoxical.
The experience of being hasn't changed, but there's something that has been dropped or.
Well, you're no longer, yeah.
Something, there's a
Sure.
subtle.
Well, you're no longer addicted to these interpretive frameworks.
I think it's as simple as when you see that something's really funny, especially something about like yourself or what you believe in. When you see somebody makes fun of it and it's like, oh man, oh yeah, but that's so funny. It's like that, it's like you can't take it seriously anymore. You can't take any of the framework, so to speak, the interpretive thing. You can see it.
Right, but that's what I mean by being free of them. Doesn't mean that they don't exist for you. It just means that you're free of them. You're not an addict.
You are free.
I was thinking today, it's a lot
doing
like, talking about alcoholics, not from personal experience, because I don't have too much personal experience with being an alcoholic per se. But, what was I going to say?
Not family members who live
Well, yeah.
Exactly.
And when alcoholic cannot drink, and when they're not drinking, they're just the same as a person who's not an alcoholic. The only thing that makes them an alcoholic is they're going to go back and drink again. If they don't go back and drink again, they're not an alcoholic anymore. In spite of the AA, hi, I'm Peter and I'm an alcoholic thing. Um, because you're either drinking alcohol or you're not.
Mhm.
You know, you're either lost in interpretive frameworks or you're not. Can be not lost in interpretive, and everyone, no matter how, you know, spiritually spiritual, flawed they are. In actual fact, experiences naked experience all the time. But the point is they're not interested in it because they'd much rather go over to their interpretive framework because it seems much more juicy. Just like the alcoholic, he'd much rather go into the bar and get a stiff one because walking down the street and enjoying the sunlight is not interesting.
Only sobriety.
Well, I'm not speaking from hard experience here, so please correct me if I apologize to any of you experts out there if I misrepresent your situation. But
Well, the addiction to believing the things that pass through the so-called mind is also an addiction.
that's what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Addict.
That's what I'm talking about. That is the only thing that's the opposite of recognition.
But once you see then the thoughts come and I can still go, oh, the difference is that now I go, do I want to follow that train of thought? I kind of know where it goes. It's boring. But there's another one like, oh, that one's a little more interesting. I think I'll go there.
But you see,
But it's different.
when you have recognition,
Right.
you have the
You're not
perspective
stuck.
on what these things are.
Free.
When you see a thought, it's just a thought. So it doesn't have staying power. It doesn't have sting. It's not a thing that matters. It's just a thought. Or you see an interpretive framework. It's just basically a hypothesis. And it's like, okay, that's there, but it's just a hypothesis, so it's nothing.
Yeah.
And what is here, what I am, is everything. Is solid, is real, is actual, and these hypotheses and these thoughts and all that are these little wispy gossamer things up here.
Yeah.
And you can go, I can go play with them as much as I want, but I don't ever lose what I am because they exist in what I am. And what I am is not subject to them.
Yeah.
They're play toys for me that I can play with, but they're not they're not bars of a jail.
I was just making a metaphor to what he had been saying, but one of the things that you were talking about a few minutes before that, about the dream and the lucid dreaming, that I'm not sure if you put it very clearly, so.
Please correct me.
And that is that when a person becomes lucid and they're dreaming, there is still a very subtle identity with that which is being aware of the dream, seeing itself, so to speak. And that's a bit of a departure because it's still creating the dichotomy of two positions or two perspectives. Whereas this is very different in the sense that it doesn't have that sense of someone watching something, an awakened awareness or consciousness or whatever, like watching something else.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I experienced lucid dreaming that way, but whatever, sure.
Okay, good.
So for a number of years, I was very relentless with doing a noting meditation practice, where every few seconds I say a mental word. I was tracking particular things, and so it was sort of like a dense mental structure forcing me to meditate, which seemed to be effectively slowly dissolving the structure. So it seemed like it was effective yoga practice. And then the past year or so, I've been trying to just more relax and just kind of, I guess, see that experience is already happening.
Right.
But I also find that I'm more distracted and more caught up in loops of thinking. And so I'm wondering.
Well, explain so you're more caught up in loops of thinking, but you're also more recognizing experience. So what's the relationship between that?
Well, for one thing, these partial insights have been accumulating for years, so you can't. So, but I guess when there's those moments of realizing I've been caught in thinking, I don't know, sometimes it just, the density kind of dissolves.
Yeah, that's great. There's nothing wrong with getting caught in thinking. It's not about thinking is evil, don't get caught in thinking. It's just about seeing that what's real is the way it is. And occasionally what's real gets caught in thinking. And even when it gets caught in thinking, it hasn't actually become caught in anything because the thinking is happening within it. But the attention can go wander off. It's just like losing yourself in a movie, or losing yourself in a TV show or something, or losing yourself in a book. That can happen. But that happens in the context of experiencing. And it's not an either or. It's not like we're, now I'm lost it, let me go find it again. And the more one settles into, the more one develops just an intuitive recognition of experiencing, the less that becomes a dichotomy. And the more you get that you can't ever lose experience. You can be as lost in trains of thought and obsessive, compulsive, and psychosis and whatever as you want, and you haven't actually gone anywhere. You're still right here in your experience, and that's the important fact, not whether or not you're jumping around.
Well, I guess since I seem unable to just abide in things as they are, I try to use structural frameworks that are going in the right direction.
Right.
So right now, I guess there's a structural framework trying to figure out if one of those two approaches I mentioned is better.
Right. Okay. But using these structural frameworks is abiding in things as they are, because that's where, in terms of where you are in your particular process, in your particular arc, that's the medium that seems to be presenting itself in terms of your best guess of what you feel like you're engaged with. So that's very cool, because it doesn't need to not be that. That is your genuine process. That is your genuine transcendental experience, which is approaching itself in those terms it will probably prove to be a preliminary step where you'll get to a point where you'll abandon that, or you get to a point where you'll outgrow that. But you don't need to outgrow it until you do. And until you do, it's completely genuine. For example, you can have the kindergartners, not saying you're a kindergartner, but just as another example, you can have kindergartners in the sandbox playing with little dolls and toys. And it's not like, they shouldn't be doing that because they should be recognizing reality. No, when they're in that phase of their development, that is their genuine process. That is their genuine engagement with reality, is to be playing with these toys in the sandbox. It's not like you shouldn't be too self-critical. It's not like you need to, what you're doing now is not right, let me correct it. There's nothing wrong with having an aspiration to refine your own engagement, but at the same time, respect that what you're doing with your own best integrity, with your own best inspiration, is your best shot at the moment. That's you say, I want to give this my best shot, and this is what you come up with. So that's very cool. So just do that on its own terms, and that will spontaneously lead beyond itself. Because, if you engage with your exploration with intelligence and inherently, just by doing that, it will eventually refine itself into something that you'll look back on that and say, boy, I was really naive. I was stuck what I was doing back in those days. But nonetheless, that's what leads to your next apparent phase. And even as it's presenting as this, that, and the other, it's always your naked actuality engaging with itself. And any recognition you have in any context is always a recognition of that. So it's all good. It's like there's no wrong way to do it. But in general, as a rule of thumb, relaxing is always good. So any kind of like just relax and let go and chill the fuck out is like always a good
Yeah.
a good general rule of thumb. And then trust yourself to just do you give it your best shot, and you can't do it wrong, because even if you are doing it wrong relatively, that wrongness will refine itself, because you'll come upon it. Your intelligence will lead you. Wait a minute. Look what I'm doing here. But why don't I, you'll get an insight, and you'll see a way around that, which will lead you to your next thing, your next sort of mode or whatever.
I get caught in this loop of actually, I guess, continually thinking maybe I can try to do a different technique.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very uncomfortable, and it's very hard to not be gripped by it.
Right.
Gripped by the belief that I need to, I don't know, try harder or try differently.
Well, you can try different things. I mean, the one way out of that loop is to give into it, to say, okay, all right, you want me to try something different? Give it your best shot. What do you got? And then try something different and see, because anything you try is a viable vehicle for discovery, is a viable vehicle for intelligence. Even if the discovery discovers the absurdity of what you think you're doing, it's still in all, you can discover that in the context of anything you happen to be doing. So it's all good. And there's nothing, and consistency isn't necessarily a virtue. So if your mind is saying, wait a minute, I've been doing this, I want to do that, let's do that, just do it. So you can have a lot of irons in the fire. You can be doing things 10 different ways, even if they're mutually contradictory. And there's no reason it needs to make sense, because again, this doesn't make sense. And anything is a viable medium of discovery. Because whatever you're thinking it is, in actuality, it is the reality of your being exploring itself. And it's never more than that, and it's never less than that throughout all eternity. So it's a win-win. You're off the hook. There's no wrong turns on the highway of radiant presence.
That's nice.
But sometimes you talk about people being addicted to, the limited perspectives, and in my head it's like, oh, well, they would benefit by having an official yoga practice.
Yeah, but don't mistake theory from pragmatism. Theory is one thing. You're doing yoga, it's all about strategy. It's all about what you're actually doing at the time, and what you're doing and the way you're doing it, which is very real time and very intimate and personal. And you always, it's imperative with yoga, you always work with the reality of what seems to be presenting itself. Don't try to, no, it shouldn't be this, it should be that, because then the best you can do is jump into fantasy. It's much better to be with some really, really inaccurate reality than trying to be with some, better fantasy. Reality has power. So the reality of what it seems to be presenting itself, even if it's conflict, even if it's confusion, being with that very intimately and visually is the most productive and most efficient yoga, rather than trying to have some pie in the sky way it's supposed to be, and that what you should be doing, and trying to find your way to that. I mean, you can play with that stuff, and if that's really happening, then be with it. I mean, if that kind of a thing is happening.
So then right now I notice an impulse to ask another question.
Mm-hmm.
There's sort of a thought like, I don't really have anything to ask. I just want to, for some reasons, keep asking questions, and
Cool.
I can just keep doing that forever.
Sure, why not? But you can look at it. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen.
It's true.
But you can see that. Yeah, no, it's good to see that. It's always good to see what's happening and be with it. Whether or not you act on it, or whether or not you laugh at it, is irrelevant. But just be with the genuine events of the moment as they seem to present themselves. And that is your most honest, your highest integrity vehicle of intelligent discovery.
I guess one thing that kicks me into identified sense of self is when it feels like there's a need to choose how I act.
Sure. But that when you have choices, where do the choices come from? And even if you made choices, why would you choose one instead of another? Where's that coming from? Are you choosing to choose? Are you choosing are you deciding what you're deciding to pick what you're gonna pick before you have to decide what you're gonna pick, what you're gonna pick? I mean, ultimately, at the moment, it's always just sort of a random thing. It's like, why did I pick that? You know, why do I like ice cream? You know, why am I sitting here in this chair talking? You know, why I decided to. Well, yeah, but if I look at why I'm here, it's like there's no way I can make sense of it. I can say, well, I planned this all out very carefully. I knew that exactly this moment I would be saying exactly these words. It's all very much under control and precisely, you know. I mean,
well, and thinking about the fact that we may have a choice indicates that we already know there's a much greater possibility available when we began to do that. So
That's a good one.
sure.
That's good.
Yeah, but then by all means make choices, exercise your choice, and as you're exercising choices, look at what's actually happening. And you'll discover that you always get to a question mark. You can say, oh yeah, there was a choice and I chose this instead of that. But then it's like, okay, well, what really happened there? Why did it happen? Why was it that way? Why did I choose that? You know, and very quickly you get to a point of absolute mystery. It's like, what happened? And so I'm in control. I'm exercising my choice. I'm exercising my reason. But then very quickly, when you look at the actual chain of functionality, you get to a point of just random weird shit happening, and you have absolutely no idea where it came from. So even our control emerges out of the chaos and infinity that we are. So in other words, control isn't controlled. So when you can exercise as much control as you want in your life, and that control is coming from, is completely uncontrolled. It's coming from, what's controlling the controlling? And if something is controlling it, what's controlling the controlling of the controlling? I mean, it falls apart very quickly. Yeah, but it just falls apart when you go look at the way things actually happen. And it's always paradoxical. It's not like it's never one side or the other. Do I choose the words I say? Sure. Do I speak spontaneously and I have no idea what I'm going to say? Sure. It's not like one is true or the other is true. They're both kind of true in a way, and ultimately neither of them is true. It just ends up as a question mark. Yeah, they're just not. All these descriptions and analyses ultimately are absurd because what this is fundamentally unanalyzable, fundamentally inconceivable. So all these analyses are just absurd oversimplifications.
Yeah, that's interesting. I choose the next word I was going to say. What do you do a search in a dictionary?
Yeah.
That's the word right there. That's the one. That's the next one to say.
It's usually so.
Huh?
It's usually so.
So, let me tell you another lie.
So then it's like so.
It's usually so.
See, if you were in another generation, it would usually be like.
Yeah, like,
Like it was like, like.
So, you're.
Case in point.
Good, so,
Right there.
You were talking about relaxation.
Yeah.
Is it useful to talk about that same thing in the context of like trust or surrender or something?
Yes. And one and the same. But relaxation is a better way to approach that because relaxation is palpable. relaxation is something you can do. Trust and surrender are abstractions that only make any sense in terms of really elaborate notions that are, are going to make a philosopher dizzy. Whereas relaxation is palpable. It's just like, relax. And you say, oh, okay. Yeah, it's very immediate. It's very, across the board. I mean, you were talking about, conceptual and physical and emotional and all these various categories. I mean, relaxation is just like, it just like smears across all that instantaneously.
Well, it's not even just what we do. Everything is relaxed.
Yeah.
Just exactly.
But the action of relaxing approximates that. The action of relaxing opens one to the native mode, which is already absolutely relaxed. There is zero tension in reality. Reality has absolutely zero tension with itself. It has constant dynamic disequilibrium, but it has zero tension. And so all of the tension that we imagine, that we think we have, is all imaginary. And so when you relax, that becomes obvious. And as you say, it very much in surrender and letting go. And I mean,
But even then, like you can be like all uptight and relax to being all uptight.
Yeah.
That's cool.
No, yeah, relaxing doesn't mean something is doing instead of something else. Relaxing just means let go of fighting what it is. Let go of struggling. So you can be totally uptight. And you can even be struggling and let go of struggling with the fact that you're struggling. You can be totally confused and let go of the fact that you're confused. And even if you're confused and you think you shouldn't be, just let go of worrying about that. So yeah, I'm confused and I think I shouldn't be. Yeah. And then your relaxation brings a kind of a, so what?
Yeah.
As a sort of a context.
There you go. Spiritual context.
So you relax the effort of defining?
Sure. Just relax. And if you're, or just relax about needing to relax the effort of defining. I mean, relaxing is like, just relax. And let go of, and above all, let go of needing to let it go. So that relaxation can get to a very, very subtle place.
For me, I found it very useful to work with belief. I stopped believing what I believed, and yet there was always the opportunity for me to continue to stop believing.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Always.
Yeah, belief is always present as a mode.
Belief is always there, and there's always the opportunity to stop. And you can't actually stop believing, but you can stop believing your beliefs.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what it is.
Stop believing that it matters whether or not you're believing what you believe.
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera.
Kind of like I was pulling the rug out from everything.
Yeah.
By noticing I was pulling the rug out from under the old way of doing things. And
Yeah.
after a while, you begin to see that actually the confidence in that working, and then you see that you can do it in more different ways,
very
more
much so.
situations.
Yeah. Because it's not about changing anything. This yoga is not about changing anything. It's just about letting go of all of that. Letting go of giving a shit, whether or not you're wanting to change everything. So I don't like, I want to change everything. It's okay, so what? So that may be there. And then what?
Well, sometimes you have to do that to see that nothing's changed.
Sure.
In recognizing that, the thing that remains the same no matter what happens.
Absolutely.
This sort of attempt we have to to kind of move toward an object and then see that, oh, nothing's different.
Yeah.
Ooh, this grass is really green.
No, that one over there's greener.
I would say it seems to present itself. You can't really do it because you haven't seen it yet. It shows you.
Yeah, it does everything.
Another question. It seems like when you direct people to explore what is, you're directing people to universal qualities of experience, maybe awareness or radiance. I also found when I explore content, it will dissolve by sort of being with, focusing on a particular content.
Yes. Yeah, there are no universal qualities, and there are no specific qualities. The specifics are the universals, and the universals are the specifics. Everything exists in exactly the same way. There's no gradation of, oh, that's universal and this is specific. You're always with specifics, but specifics can be and ultimately are infinitely vague and infinitely undefinable. So being with specifics is the way one discovers what you're calling universals, which is what this actually is. So if you look in the field of experience, there's infinite specific qualities, right? Specific, just a range of colors, specific colors in your field of vision, specific, frequencies in your field of hearing, and blah, 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 including a field of thought, including other realms of experience of subtle vibes or whatever the heck. And yet, none of it is even there. When you go looking at any of it, you don't find what you were looking for. You find something that's totally other. And you always find exactly the same thing, whatever your starting point is. Which is, I think, another way of saying what you said. So it's a very good observation. But you always have to look at specifics, because that's all you can find. Even if you're looking for universal qualities, where you're going to look to find universal qualities, so you're going to have to find the specifics of those universal qualities, or you won't have anything to look at other than the pretense of it. And then when you see what it is you're actually looking at, you'll discover it's not at all what you thought it was when you started looking at it, if you thought it was anything. And that's the point. So yeah. But in other words, what you said is exactly right, and what you said leads to what you're calling universal qualities, because that's all that actually exists. Specifics don't actually exist. It's very paradoxical. All you can find is specifics, but when you go look and see any specific, you can't actually find it.
It seems so much easier they do with tiny things.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Big things.
Yeah, always.
You know?
I mean, when I give people directions for noticing, it's always pick some concrete, some specific small portion or whatever of your experiential field and be with what's there outside of interpretation. You know, pick some little dot of color you're looking at, or some, particular sound you're hearing, or some, feel your fingertips and just trip on what is actually there, and you'll notice right away that it's a whole lot weirder than you thought it was when you started. And just go into that weirdness and see if you find bottom, and you won't ultimately.
Irritation is a good one. Too.
Oh,
It's like this guy made me. I asked for an open-faced bagel and put all the fixings on, like the lox on one side, the onions and tomatoes on the other. And I was like irritated. I was like,
I'm part of open-faced anonymous.
I'm irritated. And I went from I'm irritated to I'm not irritated. Irritation, and what's irritation? And then all of a sudden, like the whole world was one.
Yeah, you look at what anything is, and everything dissolves.
Yeah.
I mean, if you do it well, and that's real good yoga. When you do real good yoga, you look at any one thing, and everything dissolves. You should think should dissolve. That's when you look at one thing and everything dissolves. That's excellent yoga.
But when I look at something really profoundly move, but it just scared.
Well, yeah, but that's not the point. The point is not to keep things away. The point is just to see.
Yeah.
It's not about controlling. It's not about avoiding some particular qualities. It's just about seeing what they really are. And when you see what they really are thoroughly enough, you won't need to avoid it, because you won't give a shit.
Right.
Because it's all just this. None of it is actually what it seems to be.
This ain't self-help or self-improvement, dude. There ain't no self-improvement. You're already perfect.
Making it better.
Well, on that note, it's our break time. So the favorite time of the evening has rolled around. So we'll be back in about 10 minutes. I'm gonna leave the video rolling. So if you're watching this after the fact, you might want to fast forward about 10 minutes.
I mean, I'm warm and I'm gonna be.
Hey, are you over your dad or something? Oh, okay. Did you get your dinner?
No.
Okay. Okay, so I'll be down, I'll be back at 10 o'clock.
That means it must be everything.
Are you going? Oh, you will. Oh, it was so good to see you on that. From work?
Yeah, that's her.
Yeah, definitely, you do that. Oh, are you still bored, Chloe? It never ends. Oh, now you can. So now you can finish that. Yeah, I know. When the shore I got
a big rewiring job, that's all it is. Yeah.
But when all is said and done, the wiring is still in the same place.
Yeah, yeah. You just navigate it differently.
Yeah.
The attempt is to rewire, but when you find out, oh, wait a second, I can print these wires any way I want. Those stay there, but I got other ones.
Amazing. I had,
Oh my God.
a handful of those.
Haven't.
Oh, those like pecans?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I thought you'd like those.
Oh, you got those?
Oh, yeah, I knew, I said,
Cool.
Peter would like.
Oh, yeah. Good call.
They're addictive, they're like crack.
Oh, dude, I'm gone.
Yeah, yeah. Are you guys going on any more trips?
We might go to Eugene and Labor Day.
Oh, yeah.
You know what, you're just last talking about, when I first got into this, I realized that all the mathematics is based on axioms, right? So I looked at, okay, what's the point?
Yeah,
Right away, you find out that you can't even say what a point is. You've always thought that there's a point out there. You close your eyes and pretend there's a point. You cannot find a point. And it's so obvious, right? It's so obvious. So then I said, I came up with a thing, okay, it's like trying to pitch it, trying to pitch a tin in space, right? And you're trying to put the points down somewhere, but you're gonna hold it there. So you gotta hold the whole thing together, because nothing is sticking in anything, because there's anything to hold on to, right? Same with lines, same with all the rest of mathematics is based on those axioms, which is just
You could
It's
live
pretty
it.
sharp stuff out of nothing. It's all bullshit.
totally just axiomatic.
Yeah.
But it's amazing.
No, but you're too
It's
getting
totally
some
amazing.
way.
You look at the magic we do.
Oh, yeah.
If you're always in semi.
Well, you one time you said to me, it was really great thinking, you said,
That's right.
say, well, you know, all these people are actually, all these engineers are actually just, what they're doing is performing magic, and they do all this. Now, we're trying to say, no. Peter's
Yeah, no, me too.
They went through some really, they're doing
I
these
like the
difficult
sun.
abstractions, and they've got all this stuff going, these mathematical formulas, and they've got all these, parameters they're putting in this, and I thought about myself as a programmer. I have all these parameters, I'm writing all this code, and I said, wait a second, what's doing this? And then I said, wait a second, I'm sitting at this keyboard, yeah, you're sitting at the keyboard, and I'm typing, oh yeah, you're typing? Okay, I get it, there's the magic right there.
Yeah.
You don't even know what you're doing, right?
And yet you have
There
it.
it is, the result is, all this stuff is appearing.
All functionality is the inherent intelligence.
No, gluten-free has come a long way.
All apparent process is just its vehicle for doing what it does, which is totally transcendental. So the process doesn't accomplish anything.
Right.
It's just a medium that's an intermediary that's there. It's like an explanation.
Yeah.
Or a caption in a picture.
Yeah, yes, that's right. It's like the caption at the bottom of the picture, remember you were talking about at the bottom, you read it. This is it, go down.
Now I know what it is.
That's what it is, you read a whole little explanation, but then you look at it, it's boom. Totally beyond those words. Those don't mean anything compared to that. Sometimes I find it's almost more useful in terms of the Yanni perspective is to try to prove something wrong first. Say, all right, I'm going to prove the opposite's the case and go about that. And then when you fail at it, then you recognize that the opposite has to be the case because you failed at proving that it wasn't true. I guess it's a technique that a lot of people use.
But that thing goes around too. Oh, you just turn that around, did you?
What's that?
The little.
Oh, yeah, no, I just turned the whole computer. It's, yeah, I can.
I can see it going around.
Don't make them dizzy, remember them. The Blair Witch Project movie thing, whatever, oh god, that was heinous.
It hangs on there nicely. It's great.
Where did you find this?
It is supposed to do that?
Amazon, dirt cheap.
Yeah,
It's a Zeiss lens, and it's like 40
really
bucks
good. I
or
looked for a
something.
long time to find that
It's
thing.
nuts.
There's a lot of them. Yeah, I found
And
it.
it's HD, so it's very high,
What's it
high
called?
res.
And that's camera, and the microphone's really good.
Their brand?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
there's
a
too much there.
main brand.
So
What's
how do you
it?
bypass the camera on the computer?
Logitech.
You can do it, you do
Logitech.
settings in Google Hangouts.
Yeah.
That's what my,
Oh, okay.
Say again?
So that's called the Zeiss, when you've got another camera, it overrides the existing camera.
Oh, but, and where do you plug it in, what part of the computer?
USB.
USB?
Oh, it's USB.
That's just Zeiss, Z-E-I-S?
No, it's a Logitech.
Yeah, it's a Logitech.
The lens is a Zeiss lens. Zeiss makes very high quality, the German lenses make very high quality lenses.
So it's like a $40 Logitech camera and
Got
microphone?
Amazon.
Ridiculously cheap.
Yeah.
Oh, a lot of their electronics.
Prime Day.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Big
yeah,
one.
yeah.
Is today Prime Day?
Mhm.
Oh, I didn't even know. I didn't even look.
Are you a Prime member?
What is Prime?
Yeah,
You better go on there. Well, Prime members get even more
There's
discounts.
specials and
Yeah,
sales.
they
It's
try,
a
they
marketing
a-
thing. This one
it's
gets
a
you
hundred-
to
try to get you to
the
spend more money, you're spending a lot more than you save.
Right.
They try to dump all
It's
their stuff.
it's $100 membership.
Yeah, I'm in Prime.
It was like announcing.
And then you go, right.
I didn't know today was the day. I don't really want anything. But I might want one of those.
Yeah.
I need my case for my phone. It's really good.
Well, yeah, the one I got on my was the camera. Meetings, you know? It's like, if I like wave, you can't even see it.
Wow,
You can't see that motion. I have to go like this.
wow.
And maybe your bandwidth, I don't know what your internet's
Pretty
like.
good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Maybe it's maybe it's your camera circuitry or something.
Really good.
I don't know how much it is.
This is one good Zen never a big.
Oh, the Zen,
Okay,
old
that's
vine,
really bad.
old Zen vine.
So far,
Old Zen vine,
Excellent.
Well, there's more of it, you know, if you are interested, just go to Whole Foods.
Oh, Whole Foods got it?
Yeah, I don't know if they all do, but the one up in Sonoma where I live, they
I'm
have.
not trying to get organic.
But I think in Berkeley here, they
Doesn't
have
seem
foods
like
by
there's so much
sundown.
better.
Gotta be old.
I don't see, actually, the ones I brought, some
Yeah.
OZ Symposium.
Go check it out.
Did they ever work, Janet?
Shasta last weekend.
This
is my neighbor.
Oh, yeah.
He's so cute, I have to crush on him, maybe he's married, I can't see him, I tried that. But he went up to, Mount Shasta with the Native American. They were chanting drum and.
It's always like to see them move most of the
This is the time to go to Shasta.
Are we back?
Yeah.
We're back.
We're back.
So you were talking about, talked about Sherlock, last time.
Yeah.
And so I watched a little bit of that. And, what you like about it is, how he is able to deal with specifics. Is that like part of like,
Is that what I like about it?
well, you were talking about like great art expresses those subtleties, right? It brings them.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about it is it's some edgy motherfuckers are putting on that show. That's what I like about it. That sums it up.
Okay.
That's technical. Technical.
But how does that, but how does those specificities that he gets into, I said that word wrong, I know, but.
He slices and dices it.
Yeah, how does, is that a good metaphor for the noticing thing where you get to, in a way it is, because he'll get into little teeny weeny details and then all of a sudden he sees the entire event, the picture, the big picture,
Maybe.
maybe. Yeah.
Nothing makes any sense, so it's best not to try to figure anything out.
Oh, So I ain't gonna have time to figure nothing out.
Well, these
They
days
always
myself,
tell you that.
these days myself, I like the mundane, the simple, but just the bare stuff. And like, cause it's everywhere, you know, it's everything. So you don't have to cook up anything. There's no, like, reach for something that isn't here. Because what is here, in, this same glassy thing.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, you find that everything is exactly the same. And so at that point, it stops mattering too much what it is or isn't. So you just go where you like and do what you like, and what you find there is exactly what you would find if you went somewhere else anyway. So.
Except it's not the boring, oh, this is just like.
It's not boring, it's perfect fullness, perfect satisfaction, perfect lusciousness.
Little difference. And it's actually not a difference, it's just what's staring at everyone all along. It's not cohesive.
One thing that's interesting about specifics or looking at anything specifics is sooner or later, you know, I don't know, maybe it's kind of just what happens for me. I sort of go backward into something much more open and general. And so,
What does backward mean?
well, I don't, I guess I'm asking, what is this? And so I'm, you know, in a sense, and so I'm sort of working into it to maybe some kind of an answer, but it turns out to be very general and you know, and very subtle, obscure. I mean, I could name all kinds of things, but the specific sort of works back, and it's not no longer quite as specific.
When you look at anything, you actually find everything.
Right. So what I want to ask is, what comes, I mean, maybe it sort of comes simultaneously, but I get this sense that the open, the subtle is always there, and somehow it just spills out into a specific.
Well, it's not a spilling, but it's, the specific is the openness in the subtle, and the subtle is the openness in the specific.
Yeah.
But it can look the way it looks.
Right.
And it can look like specifics, or it can look more open, and it doesn't matter what it looks like.
Yeah.
Because it always is just that. It's always just all of that. And you know, as humans, we're trained in this dualistic kind of thinking, where either it's specific or it's not. Either it's a specific thing or it's a general.
Mm-hmm.
But the specific is the general is the specific. And the way in which you have to see the way in which that's so for yourself, you have to discover the way in which that's so for yourself, because it does not compute with normal human logic. You know, it sounds absurd. So, but when you find experientially the way in which that's so, then you have access to this the way this is, because any particular is actually everything. The totality of reality comes together to present every detail. And every detail is nothing other than the totality of reality presenting itself. Now that sounds like poetry or philosophy, but in actual fact, it is physics. It's the structure of what this actually is. So when you look at any detail, that is just an interface point for everything. And so you touch anything, you're actually touching everything through that interface point. And you can think of every point as like a three-dimensional heart shape that goes out to include the totality of reality. So you touch that, you're touching everything. but everything as presented here. And then you touch here, touching everything as presented as it is presented. It sounds very like philosophy or something, but in actual fact, it is most concrete experiential actuality. And the point of noticing is to discover the way in which that's so.
Sounds like Indra's net.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it is. And I mean, all of these things are ways of trying to illustrate this principle.
Right. Or a hologram.
Yeah, all of those, and all these kinds of metaphors are more or less common, but they're viable because of their degree of accuracy they have. But the way this actually is completely unexpressible and unsymbolizable. But on the other hand, it doesn't need to be expressed or symbolized because it's completely explicitly on display in the experience itself. It just needs to be noticed, and once you find it, it's completely obvious.
It's paradoxical to me that when it sees itself, it recognizes it's always seen itself, and yet the hiding of itself is just a mirage, so to speak.
Yeah.
And yet, then everything's still here, though.
Yeah. And the way it reveals itself is to be seeming to hide itself.
Yeah.
Which again seems like it would be opposites, but it's not.
Yeah.
Relation.
That's interesting.
That's
That's how I describe it to you.
That's fun stuff.
It gives a whole new meaning to Veil of Tears.
Mm-hmm.
The whole deeper thing, the veil.
So is there ecstasy?
Nothing but.
Well, if it's nothing but, then how do we recognize it? If there's no agony.
Yeah.
Well, that's always the problem. That's why it's so hard to recognize.
Such delicious agony, though. It's ecstasy.
There you go. Delicious agony.
Am I right?
Yes.
Sounds like
No doubt about that.
I mean, any experience, if you look close, is an intense agony. Any experience is an agony, and yet that, if you look at that, what that agony is, it's an inconceivable ecstasy of energy, of transcendental energy presence.
But when you see this, you also see the richness of everything. So even sorrow becomes this beautiful dance, this music. It becomes this very heavily textured thing, which you don't have to be repulsed by because it's rich. It's inviting almost.
Yeah.
And as long as if you have seen, then you can see that about it.
Yeah.
If you don't, then you get mired in because you're believing you think the sorrow.
You get sucked into the caption instead of enjoying the picture.
Exactly.
But there's no getting lost in anything.
Well,
That isn't.
nowhere to
Or you can say there's nothing but getting
Also,
lost.
revealing itself. It's also.
There's no place to be, so there's no loss.
Yeah. It's like go for it. Just like there's absolutely nothing you can do.
That's the problem. There's no mistakes.
All I can do is just laugh.
Or not.
Or cry.
And there's so much desire to make something better or something worse. And every thought I have in that direction
It's like, oh, yeah, but this wants experience. There's nothing this doesn't want to experience.
Well, everything's on the table, so in practice it's arbitrary. So you just follow the line of least resistance and see and go where to go, do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And what you find is pretty much what you started with anyway. So it's a wash, you know. You never gain anything, you never lose anything. So that's perfect freedom. You can do whatever, you know, go wherever you want or not, and it's all good.
That reminds me of one of the Dzogchen concepts is like toward the end. In the beginning, it's like you recognize it. There's this moment, oh, I recognize it, and then it lets go. And then they start getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter until it's gone. So then they talk about that as you recognize the thief has entered the house, but there's nothing in the house.
There's nothing for him to
There's nothing to
take.
steal. Go for it.
Come on in.
Come on in. Help yourself.
Dzogchen is great fun. They've developed these wonderful subtle analogies and all that.
Yeah.
It's fun to read just to see the artfulness of the way they put these things.
Yeah, it's very fun.
Sometimes I miss the comfort of having a guide to pray that isn't everything to pray to and believe in.
You can have a God. There's nothing wrong with a God.
But it just isn't.
You have a real thing now.
It doesn't have, you know what I mean? There's not.
Daddy
It
isn't.
doesn't have the,
Rescue,
it doesn't have
okay.
the poignancy of the naive submission to it.
Yes.
Oh, well.
Oh, well.
That's the arguable downside of maturity. You don't get to go.
You have to
You
give
don't
them
get to have
Santa
that.
Claus.
You don't get to have that delicious submission and looking up to mommy. You know,
Yeah.
you're like, well, I'm the parents now. It's like, oh, but I miss that. I like being a little baby. And where's my mommy?
You can pray to me.
John's available.
You can especially give thanks to him.
And he's in fact a deity too. So
I
you're
love that.
You can worship the sun. That's all.
Like,
I'm not being here.
you can do. Worship the radiance.
In a sense, I
And-
do.
Yeah, of course. You
And
have
I,
to.
and I get that. I mean, I have moments of.
Yeah, but and most deities are simply symbols of radiance.
Yeah.
Anyway, so when you worship the radiance, you know, if you're worshiping, you know, one of the more subtle deity symbols, they're not very far from saying that they're obviously the radiance, and so the radiance is the reality of what the God force is. You know,
Right.
the creative, the Shakti, the creative impulse that's doing reality. And, you know, if you want to worship something, worship that.
No, it's more about fixing discomfort.
Oh, yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
Can I enjoy praying?
Because he ain't gonna come over and fix the diddly.
Hey, John, this toe's been a little sore. Can you do something about that?
Recently, I've noticed it seems like I'm able to have more synchronicity.
Mhm.
And sometimes it seems like I can sort of make things happen.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if there's a place for that.
Sure. That's very good. That's very good noticing, actually, because that's turning into the inherent intelligence. The nature of the inherent intelligence, its native mode, is a complete alignment of everything. And so any kind of prescience or synchronicity or that kind of a subtle, nonlinear, irrational interconnection is the inherent, what I call the inherent intelligence, which again is not a separate thing, but is a prime aspect of the nature of reality, the nature of the radiant presence. The inherent intelligence means the fact that all phenomena are so inconceivably, perfectly synchronized and interlocked with each other. You know, all the subatomic particles are dancing around perfectly, behaving the laws of physics, and beings are, you know, cause and effect is, you know, I mean, just all of this inconceivable detail is all happening like smack, right, all lined up just the way it's supposed to. And so the functionality that is actually doing that, and that all that consists of, is what I call the inherent intelligence, or the fundamental, you call it the structural functionality of reality. And you are that, of course, because that is you, and that's what's doing you as well. And what you are is that. So any degree of tuning into that aspect, which can show up as synchronicity or prescience or, you know, various kinds of nonlinear magical participation, is just tuning into that. You know, that you could say that level of phenomena, if you will. And so that's great noticing. But again, don't try to make anything of it, and don't put yourself in a personal relationship to it. You know, it's not about you and it. It's just this is there. And it is participatory, because it is you and it is participating, and so you are participating. So it is participatory, but it's in a very non-linear, unstructural way.
Or non-personal.
Yeah, impersonal. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So that's what you are.
Well, so I'm not sure if I'm going to choose what I say now, but what I have to say is like, so I was going to the chiropractor and getting these adjustments in my neck.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, well, let's see if I can do this myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like I did like a little clicks when she was doing it. But there was this overlay of it being linear, and there was this like stress because I was trying to, you know, protect myself really. I'm trying to do this. So I guess I could just keep noticing that, but it is distraction. Check my body like.
That's just another mode, and if that's
all I do all day.
good luck with that one, honey. I think that's trained on left the station. Sorry, it's an old people joke. You're gonna understand.
Well, the thing is that you'll do what you do. Somebody else.
Exactly.
Your age and your general description might not have that attitude, but that's just the way they are.
Yeah.
They might not be taking care of their body. They might not give a shit. They're somewhere in a corner in an alley shooting up. So that's them. And so you the thing is, I think there's this notion that we're going to stop being the temperament or the persona or the script that the thing that we are, the pattern that we are, so to speak. And that doesn't cease.
Whatever your inclination to be with things in a certain way, that's just your mode at the present time, so that's fine. So, but again, so whether that's a certain way or not is not. The point is to and see the way in which it's happening. Yeah, nothing is what you think it is.
That's great.
And when you are with anything without trying to spin doctor it or control it, you discover that it's not, that it's more. It's not that it's not what you think it is. It's that it's much more than what you think it is.
It's inclusive.
Yeah. So everything is what it is, but it's infinitely more than that and infinitely other than that at the same time. And so in noticing, noticing one discovers this, and that's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
In fact, I think we have a situation where we imagine what we're thinking it is,
Yeah.
isn't. We actually put it out that it can't be that, but in fact it is.
Yeah.
And we always, at least,
Can you give us more of an example, Don?
well, for myself, I used to go around thinking, if I concentrate, I can jump over buildings or whatever it is. And then I would say, no, well, that's absolutely stupid. It isn't actually stupid. Whether I can jump over buildings or not is neither here nor there, but it's the thinking, dismissing my thought as being unrealistic is stupid.
Yeah.
I'm probably not making
No,
sense.
We saw you.
That's clear enough, because the reality of phenomena completely and utterly transcends any description of it or any thought about it. And to such a to 100, I mean, literally such a degree as to be extreme, grotesquely, extremely, you can't emphasize how much that's the case.
Well, even if you take the example that, what's the name of it? Ben. Ben was saying, chiropractor. You take scientists from very science, or a doctor or anything, and they're going to be able to describe your subtle movements while from their perspective, from what their science is. So, and none of them are 100% true, but none of them are wrong per se. So they're just simply interpretations. And when you see this, you recognize that having the interpretation doesn't matter.
Right.
It's just another balloon flowing by you. That's all it is.
And every interpretation is hopelessly partial.
Yes.
Absurdly partial.
And they're more.
So even that you're defending yourself, is an absurd, under exaggeration of what's actually happening. What's actually happening is wholly beyond that.
But every interpretation is made up out of reality.
Yeah, it's not that the interpretations are wrong. It's that the phenomena is so much more and other than that. So
and interpretations themselves are a phenomenon.
Well,
that you can let float by. It's just another balloon.
But they're not theories.
No,
they're not even
Absolutely
theories.
theories. I mean, they're real.
I mean, even in regular life, I mean, there's more to, some people see more than other people. Like, we went for the amniocentesis for my daughter, and I can't tell what's the face and what's the side. I thought the stomach was her face.
Yeah,
and
right.
the doctor said, oh, it's a girl, this is the clitoris. I'm like, but I can't even tell what a face is.
So I can't find her face from a blob.
Yeah.
Right?
And so we think we see, we think what we see is real. One time I went to the bookstore and I couldn't believe it. It turns out all the books, the shape of books had changed all at once, and there were no leftover books. And at some point I realized I was wearing a pair of contact lenses that didn't fix my astigmatism. But you believe what you see.
Yeah. Seeing is not believing.
They're printing them all crooked.
They're all long and thin, and none of the old kind of books were in the story.
Oh, you're trippy. That's a good one. I want what he's got.
Honey, you have what he's got. in every way. Take that any way you want.
Actually, really don't want to be
Evil. I got astigmatism too, so I can relate.
We weren't talking about the astigmatism.
Peter, a while ago you were mentioning something about noticing the object or whatever the object of attention and everything else dissolving, and that being good noticing. That
It's not so much everything else dissolving, it's that the object of attention itself ceases to exist as what you thought it was when you started engaging with it. It's discovering what any experience actually is, experientially. Experience presents itself as with all of this apparent detail, and you know, like, so you can sort of scan your whole field of vision, you see, and you're seeing everything, and everything seems to be very sharp, or, you know, relatively, except for Mahesh, of course. everything seems to be very sharp and very detailed and all that. But you take anything and look at it closely, and also discover, yes, it's not so sharp, it's kind of blurry. And it seemed to be, if I don't look too closely, it seems to be a very clear color, and I can tell what that color is. But when I look very closely, the color it is sort of morphing and weird and has all different subtle shades. And so, in other words, at first glance, things seem to be very specific. But when you look at those specifics very precisely and very engagedly, you discover that there is literally so much information present, and that information is not actually coherent. In other words, the information doesn't what's the word?
Coalesce.
Yeah, coalesce into coherence, into unity. On the other hand, on the contrary, the information sort of diverges into more and more difference. So the closer you look at any detail of your experience, concretely, not conceptually, and try and see exactly what's there, you discover more and more and more information, and the information does not come together with the other information that you're discovering. It also just spreads out. And so you start with a simple phenomena, and you look and see what's there, and you end up with this, it just opens up into, you can't say what it is. I mean, literally, and this is very easy to do. In fact, we do it all the time. But in most cases, we don't bother. You know, in other words, the closer you look, when I say look, that implies a visual engagement, but any look is a euphemism for any kind of experiencing, and anywhere within the experiential field, within any sense field or outside of a sense field. When you look very, very closely, very precisely at any specific experience, you discover this phenomenon. Now, in most cases, things seem to be as coherent as they are, because usually we don't look closely. You know, I look over there and I say, oh, there's Gavin, right? And he's wearing a green or a blue shirt and blah, 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 you know. But then if I look more closely, it's like, well, what's really there in my experience that I'm calling Gavin? And I discover, oh my God, there's just this universe of colors and shapes, and, you know, and none of it really fits with any of the rest of it. You know, and you can, I mean, we can find this, a real easy way to find this, to notice this, is look at your own face in the mirror. You know, say you go into the bathroom and there's a mirror there, and just glance at your face and say, okay, that's me. I know, I'm seeing my own face. I know what it looks like. But then say, okay, what do I really look like? And just take your face and just you know, I mean, don't like tense up or anything, but just relax and look very, very steadily at your whole face without scanning it, without moving your eyes around, and just trying to figure out what you look like. And the longer you look, the less an idea you'll have of what you look like. It's not like, the fantasy is, well, the longer I look, the more precisely I'll know exactly what I look like, right? Because the fantasy is, the closer you look at things, the more coherent they become. But in actuality, the closer you look at things, the more incoherent they become. And so experience is made out of incoherence that presents as a pseudo-coherence, because we don't generally examine our experience that closely. Generally, when you walk into a room, you sort of glance around and you think you see everything, and it's all very sharp and clear and just sitting there. But you look at it closely, and things start to get weird. I mean, I'm sure you've heard me talk about the experiment. It's very, very easy to do. Take a blank wall. Here's a perfect wall. Look at that. I've never seen a blanker wall in my life. You take a blank wall and just relax your gaze and look at the wall steadily for like 5 minutes and see what it is you're seeing. And after a while, you'll think someone dosed you with acid or something, because I mean, there'll be these lights dancing around in colors and shapes, and you'll be like, where did they come from? But they're there in experience all the time, but they're censored and they're not recognized because we skim over it, know there's a wall and it's precisely this color and this shape and blah, blah, blah. But you look closely and all of a sudden, exactly what color it is and exactly what shape it is becomes much more nebulous. And you discover all this other information that's actually there in your experience. And this happens across the board. I mean, a blank wall is or a clear sky is a cardinal example of a way to notice this. But you can look at very detailed, very elaborate things too. And again, I'm saying look, and which implies vision, but this again applies across the board in terms of experiential phenomena. Look at anything that's like have a thought, or remember what you had for lunch yesterday, and picture it sitting on the table, the way you saw it, say, and then and it'll just sort of flash there, and okay, yeah, that looks like kind of like what I had for lunch. But then look more closely at what you're picturing, and see what you see, and you'll just discover just all sorts of weirdness. And experience is made of weirdness that presents itself as apparent normalcy. Experience is made of incoherence that presents itself as apparent coherence. And the whole point of noticing is to discover this phenomenon. And when you discover that actual incoherence, you discover the actual quality, and you discover the actual perspective that all this exists. And all these facts and logic and structure, that'll just be, absurdly childish to you.
When you, I think there's some Zen anecdote or something about that the monk by the river is meditating, and after a while doesn't hear the river or something.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of disappearance of it. Does that relate to what you were saying at all?
Mm-hmm. More or less.
More or less.
What I said doesn't really relate to anything but itself. And everything relates to it because everything whatsoever is just like that.
Well, dharmic concentration, is that useful? Is that important?
What do you mean by that?
That absorptive concentration.
Doesn't matter. I mean, it's just another instance of look at what it is and you'll discover the same thing. I mean, look at concentration of any kind and you'll discover the same phenomena. Look at relaxation and letting go and you'll discover the same phenomena. Everything exists in only one way. So all these differences of, this and that, concentration, relaxing, being awake, being asleep, focusing, acting silly, all these things that we suppose are very different than each other, in actual fact are exactly the same thing. And we have this elaborate pretense that they're all very different and this is this and that's that. But with every single one of them, bar none, when you look at what's actually there experientially, you find exactly the same thing, which is incoherence masquerading as coherence. And since the coherence isn't really there, it doesn't matter what you're calling it. So when you're doing some kind of intense concentration meditation or something, you're pretending that it's there. If you look at what's actually there when you're doing that, you discover absolute incoherence. Or you can be just chilling out and hanging out and listening to some cool tunes or something, right? And when you look at what's actually there, you find exactly the same incoherence present. So how is the one different than the other? It's a spin doctoring. Where your starting point of what you're calling it seems to be very different, but what it actually is exactly the same. So why bother to go through all this pretense of calling it different? Now I'm meditating. No, I'm not. No, I'm meditating. I mean, that's a famous Dzogchen exercise. The teacher will be sitting up there, and the students will be all out there sitting, groveling, to the, before the high and mighty Lama or whatever. And he'll say, okay, everyone meditate. And everyone sort of snaps to attention and straightens their back, and they're all sitting, all stiff thing. And he said, okay, now relax. And meditate. And the point is, he'll keep this up for about 10 minutes. And after a while, they'll say, well, we're supposed to be meditating or relaxing now. You can't remember. After a while, you can't tell the difference, and you get that, you're pretending. Meditating is just a pretense. You pretend you're meditating, and then you pretend you're not meditating, but in actuality, they're exactly the same condition. So why bother to call one? Now I'm sitting up straight and going like this. How exactly is that different from sitting back and going like this and looking around, with a smile on your face? In terms of what's actually there, is absolutely no difference at all.
Because awareness is one.
Well, you could say that, but that's a little thin, because what's there is the same as what's there in the other one. And what you're calling it actually refers to what it is, and doesn't refer to some concept that you're defining it as being. Definitions only refer to the phenomena. This is a computer, not because this conforms to some definition of what the word computer is supposed to mean. This is a computer because the word computer indicates what this actually is. So what this actually is the important thing, not the definition of the word computer in a dictionary. See? So what matters is the actual phenomenon that is present and what that is, not what you're calling it or thinking of it as being. And the actual phenomenon that is present is always exactly the same. It looks infinitely different than itself, but it's always the same. And if you want to call it experience, that's fine. So anything that happens is nothing other than experience. And all experiences that are seemingly different than each other, which includes all experience, because experience is infinitely differentiated, apparently, is actually also exactly the same. Experience is always just experience, and it's never more than that, and it's never less than that. And discovering that fact is what this stuff is all about. That's what this yoga is all about. Discovering what experience is, and then discovering there's nothing here but experience. And all of this apparent differentiation of all the this and the that and the this entity and that entity and blah, 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 is just spin doctoring of the same thing. And since it's of the same thing, all these definitions are actually the same. So every word means the same thing. Whatever word you say, all you're talking about is this. So you may as well just have one word in your vocabulary. all nouns are actually this, and all verbs are actually is. So whatever you say, you're actually saying this is.
That's too much.
Well, yeah, it is, but still in all, it's a big step in the right direction in terms of getting real.
So.
Therefore. QED.
Those may all be the same, but it is also delicious.
It's exquisitely delicious. And the sameness that it is, the infinite difference that it is. But the infinite difference it is actually sameness.
It's the one quite,
The one thing, there's nothing there present but the dream. And a dream, there can be, a tree and a car present and two people and a dragon, and there's no people there, there's no dragons there's no cars, there's no trees, there's just dreaming. That looks like that. So likewise here, all is here is experiencing, the actuality of experiencing, and it looks like people in a room and a conversation and computers and glasses of water and blah, blah. But none of that's actually here, because all of that actually consists of nothing whatsoever than experiencing, which is one thing. And everything whatsoever is that, because that's the only thing that exists. It's the only thing that's actually here. And so this yoga is about discovering that fact. Not theoretically, but by looking at experience and noticing the way in which that's actually true.
No, Tibetan lamas also use the shock and awe too to do it. They'll tell the person to leave, and then they'll say, "Stop! Come back here! Why did I tell you to leave?" And then they'll scream "ha" at them so loud that they're just shocked like this, trying to get them to see just what you're talking about.
My technique is just to spew bullshit nonstop.
Works.
It has approximately the same effect. Whatever works. It's the chai talking. It's the sugar talking from those damn candied pecans you bought. I'm about to fall out of my chair from the sugar rush. Jesus Christ.
For me, if there has been a watershed, it's that, after a while, you just get so bloody bored with trying to figure out something that you realize is impossible and utterly pointless to do. And you start to just enjoy whatever this is.
And you notice it's all a meaningless fabrication anyway.
Yeah.
So what have you gained when you figure out all these elaborate descriptions and stuff? It's an interpretation. It's just like.
But that's a big difference, The
Totally.
figuring out is full of frustration.
Yeah.
It's utterly dense with it. That's what it is.
Because all you end up with is you don't end up with the real thing anyway. So it's intrinsically frustrating. You end up with just more bullshit.
So then you kind of just slide over the other side. Now the water's, by gravity, it's going downhill into this big ocean of just enjoying it.
Basking,
Basking, yeah, man.
Abiding, the dude abides.
The dude abides. The dude abides. Words to live by.
There's no difference. It's the same stuff. It's just whoa, this is fun.
It seems like some part of me is continually gripped by this thing, which is that sort of miserable. Then the reality is the thinking, so I am suffering miserable, and it's very convinced.
Sure, that can seem to happen.
I mean, yeah.
A key, I was talking a little earlier about theory versus practice, and don't worry too much about theory and attend to practice. A key practical move in all of this is anything that seems to be a quandary for you, or that you're banging your head against, or that's annoying, or that you feel stuck in, don't give it any attention whatsoever. Don't try and fix it. Just bypass it altogether. The best place to do noticing is somewhere relatively meaningless in your experience. So like if you're really caught up in your thoughts and you're worried about the suffering and the this and the that and the other, it's like, okay, cool, so that's there. But what color is the floor? You go to something meaningless in your experience. Because when you discover it's easy to look at things that we think matter, things that we feel stuck in. There's all sorts of entanglement of wanting to be free of it and struggling with them and analyzing it and all this, that, and the other, which is just like a whirlwind that's just going to suck you in if you try to go there. So don't worry so you just sort of run up the red flag and say, surrender, yeah, I'm screwed, I'm lost in these fantasies of suffering, and boy, poor me. Okay, cool. But meantime, what's going on over here? Meantime, what's the sound of that the fan in the computer is making? You go to something really meaningless in your experience. It can be a sensory experience or any kind of experience, but something that just is the more meaningless, the better. But it's actually there. In other words, an actual experiential, dynamic presence, and just feel what's there. Just say something's there because I'm perceiving something. What is it that's there? Outside the context of what you thought it was when you started looking at it. Just feel what's there. So I'm looking at the floor, the color in the floor. What is color? What is color? It's something, or I wouldn't be seeing it. So something is present in my experience. What is it? And then you just play with that. And you might find yourself spinning off or thinking about things and saying, what the fuck, this, I can't figure it. Don't worry. So if that happens, you just let go, don't worry about it. And then sooner or later, you repeat. Go to somewhere meaningless in your experience and check out what's actually there. Just feel what's there. If it's vision, feel what light is. If it's touch, feel what's in. Feel that the chair under your butt. Feel what that feels like, and just I'm thinking of it as the chair under my butt. But what is it actually? How do I know there's a chair there? How do I know there's a butt there? It's this whole energy presence. It's just there. What is it? What's it like? And you just sort of trip on that. And again, almost instantaneously, you'll find yourself thinking about it and trying to analyze it. So you just let go, drop it, and then again, sooner or later, you repeat. And so that's the whole cycle, is these little snippets of checking out meaningless experience. And that doesn't mean, most of you may be caught up in these epic battles of struggling with your whatever it is you're struggling with, and all that's so okay, cool, that's happening. But even while that's happening, there's a lot of just meaningless presence happening as well, and that's your gold mine. It's the meaningless stuff that's powerful because it's more accessible, because you get less spun out as soon as you go to it. If you go to something you're struggling with, you get spun out almost instantly because you're already spun out. So you just get sucked into that. See what I mean? But if you go to something that's just totally nothing, if there's a moment of it just sort of naked presence, it's just there. And it doesn't have much backstory. It doesn't have much of a kick or an implication or importance. And so it's relatively naked. So you just feel that nakedness and feel, what is it that's here in this nakedness? What is it that's here? And how is it here? How am I perceiving that? What is it? And again, almost instantly your mind will turn into a story. So you just let it go. Don't try to stop the story. Just let it go. Just say, okay, and then go back to whatever you're interested in. You'll have enough openness to repeat. You just keep the cycle up. And in the long run, that is incredibly efficient paradoxically, even though you're not addressing all that other stuff, that's the most effective way to address that other stuff, because it'll progressively render all that stuff less and less important to you and more transparent.
When I asked the question, though, I didn't really feel that identified with it. I was sort of tripping out and letting myself ask the question and see what happens.
Cool.
I'll do that with watching thoughts come and go.
Cool. It's all good.
Well, I start to notice something, and like you were suggesting, something meaningless, and then I feel like I get to a point where there's not much more there to notice.
Cool.
And then what happens?
You're staying with it. That's a subliminal kind of holding it as being something. If you're with an experience and you feel what's there, it will open a whole sort of a chain of associations of qualities, and that which is an open-ended infinite chain which will just lead you into more and more and more. But don't worry about it. You just play with it, and sooner or later you stumble onto that stuff. But if if it's like, okay, yeah, I'm being with what's here. Okay, I'm being with what's here. Okay, it's a boring glass. So that's still, even if I'm not saying it's a boring glass, that might be a subtle holding to be that. But when I be with, well, there's light presence. What's light? there's these gleaming streaks. What are gleaming streaks? What is gleaming? And so it sort of opens into the amount of detail and the implications of it and the unresolvability of it and the fact that they're all questions with no answers that lead to more questions with no answers. And so you sort of accumulated questions and questions and questions and no answers. And so there's an implication of sort of openness or a feeling of openness that comes with that. But don't worry about it. You just play with it, and you find that for yourself. Because it's not, the point isn't to fabricate it. The point is to discover it. And so don't like, oh, there's a right way to do it, and I have to approximate it or figure it out. Just play with it, and if in doubt, relax. You know, and also be very playful. Playfulness is the best attitude. If you're being serious or you know, too sort of heavy-handed, that's a self-defeating attitude. If you just sort of like just screw around with it, like just as a lark, as a joke almost, and do it that way, that's the best attitude, because that's more consonant with the flavor of what this is anyway. In a way, this is all joking with itself. This is all a big joke on itself. So that kind of an attitude puts you resonantly more in tune with the phenomena, if you see what I mean, or if you don't.
And they can come about differently for different people. My experience was that I would look at something, and then it would be like all the definitions and the explanations would wear themselves out and dissipate, and then literally the mind would go blank. And instantly I would also notice the subtle urge to fill it in again, but there must be something here more, you know. But nothing comes. So then it's all the energy that all the definitions, like a big dictionary.
Yeah.
And then there's the energy. You're in the eye of the storm. The energy comes back. But there must be one more thing I could say about this. And you feel that energy. It's not saying anything, but it's an impulse. And then
all the time the energy presence of the impression simultaneously also there.
Yes.
So the whole thing is going on.
And eventually that's let go of, because it's seen as just energy. It's seen as the wrong word, but it's felt, sensed as just energy.
And you discover what the energy is then.
Yes, right. You
discover what this strange word energy is actually referring to. Which is of course not what you think. Because what it is unthinkable.
Everything and anything, so. And it feels, that's why talking about it, I think, is very challenging, because the way, the subtleties of not only how we each individually understand language, regardless of what language you're speaking and education we have, but also the experiences themselves they're unique to each pattern, to each individual, so to speak. No two so-called people are going to have the same textural experience of that seeing. So whatever it is to you, I don't know, I say trust the intuition that tells you you're onto something, or that it's smooth, you're flowing, or whatever word you like to use for it.
You'll find a hint of some kind of a wow factor.
Yes.
Regardless of worrying about what that is or what that means or anything. And when you begin to get any kind of a wow factor at all, that's like the rabbit disappearing down the rabbit hole. That's what you follow.
Like a sense of awe.
Now, in all of this conversation, the noise of the words is much, much, much more important than the words being said or the definitions of the words.
You've said several times this evening, and many times before, it's not what you think it is. My experience is that it is what you think it is, plus a lot more. Right. It is exactly what you think it is.
Well, what you think it is not limited to being what you think it is. It's not what you think it is isn't excluded, but it's more, so much more another is to be
if I look at this phone, it is a phone.
Absolutely.
absolutely 100% fun. And I'm thinking it's a phone, and it is a phone.
Right.
There's a whole lot more, but it
Yeah,
is a phone.
but a phone is actually a word for the universe. And seeing the way in which that's so is seeing what it really is.
Actually, what I'm doing is I'm looking at the hedge.
Who's worshiping you?
It's a mutual admiration society.
That's very interesting. That's
So
very
you can be
interesting.
each other's deities.
It's interesting you say that because
And you're gonna let each other down.
yeah, I was trained to take an object like, say, glass, and to think as many thoughts as I could about it, right? Until I reached the point where I started to say, well, where did those thoughts come from? Then I start to get into a situation where I see to see how everything is interrelated. It takes me into a deeper space where I start to see that it's actually not, it's much more than a thought, it's actually, you know, where does the sand come in? It just keeps leading to thinking about it, where you're in a state of being with that. It's just kind of a same thing. There's a really good book too, you might enjoy. It's called Buddhahood without Meditation. You ever heard about that one? It's the first couple of chapters are really good because they take the whole idea of what you think is your head or your hand, and you start going into what you think it is, and you can't really show you how you can't really find what that is. So when you look at the flash, you really can't find what it is. So you keep saying, well, there it is, but what is that? And then you find, well, that's actually a piece of, you know, a molecule. Well, what's that? Well, that's actually some atoms, and then you reach the point you don't know what those are, just concepts. You can't really say what they are, so you just do the concepts. So you say, you reach that point over and over again. And in fact,
It's for me with the glass. Once I get to the point of it's just a boring glass, I say, oh, boredom.
That's it.
What's boredom? I'm bored or I'm bored. Wait, no, I'm not bored. Boredom is. What's bored? And it's like, because I'm much more kinesthetic than I am anything else. And so it's like, it's just,
that's it.
It's just much easier for me to like have the experience that way than visually.
Yeah.
Like I'll stare and like the wall was pretty cool, but I get bored with the wall after a while, no matter how cool it gets. Yeah, but it's really interesting to find out what bored it is.
Well, it's also, it's very much, as you, a sidelight of what you're saying, or along with that, it's very much about discovering absolute dynamism too, because persistence is impossible. It's not about doing something. When you stare at the wall, you discover almost right away that you start to try and do everything else. You know, and that's the point, is you discover that this experience is just continually dancing around within itself with absolutely zero stability. And all of these seemingly stable objects are made of dancing around too. So there's all of this dynamism and dancing and incredible, more incredible dynamism. And so it's not about staying with something. On the contrary, it's you start with the fantasy if you're going to stay with something, and right away you spin off it. Right, you're already off and running, and you discover there's nothing but off and running. You're not off and running in the context of something. Off and running is in the context of more off and running. I want to look at that. It's quitting time.
You say that with such joy.
Miller time.
All right.
That wasn't a particularly pithy, strong ending statement, but screw it.
No, that was good. That was good.
So anybody who's going
See you all later. Take care.
Plaza, I need a ride.